Democrats will never abandon the long walk toward freedom. We will fight hard to defend the freedom of opportunity that makes the American dream possible. We will fight hard for the freedom to vote and to fight for a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
And even CNN played this flashback and then had a little fun with it.
The law is with us in Virginia. The facts are with us in Virginia. And the people are with us in Virginia. There's no basis in law or fact for the Virginia Supreme Court under the Constitution that exists, particularly in the aftermath of a people-approved referendum, to do anything other than to allow it to move forward.
So Timu Obama says the law is with us in Virginia. Well, he's dead wrong. You're wrong, Timu. I'm sorry. And in this video, I'm going to explain to all of the low IQ people why. In the most simple terms, he is absolutely wrong about what's going on with the decision by the Virginia Supreme Court. I'm going to make this so easy that you'll be able to understand this even if you only have about a 6th grade education. You have to boil it down and make it simple, very simple for Democrats who keep spouting off at the mouth all over social media. Well, why didn't they have a vote in California and they got the redistrict and the people voted and then the Supreme Court turned them down? Well, I'm going to answer all of that and we're going to make it very clear. But before we get to the actual explanation, let's check out this other clip. There's a news reporter that pretty much sums up all of the ridiculous statements that Timu Obama, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries himself, is putting out there. And then I guess they're going to have to really fart a lot harder if he thinks he's going to turn this situation around. And by the way, who knew when he told everybody across the nation, you know, after the Virginia thing, when he was yelling at Ron DeSantis and he said, F around and find out. If y'all do a dummy mander, you're gonna F around and find out. So who knew that that meant fart? I guess it's fart around and find out because he is farting harder. All right, so let's check out this clip and then come back. I'm going to break all this down for you. Cut to the clip.
In a statement reacting to the Virginia Supreme Court's decision to block the state's newly drawn and voter-approved congressional map, the Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says, quote, over 3 million Virginia citizens cast their votes in a free and fair election, yet the state Supreme Court has chosen to invalidate their voice, disenfranchise them, and violate their due process rights. The decision to overturn an entire election is an unprecedented and undemocratic action that cannot stand. MAGA Republicans have adopted voter suppression as a strategy, as also evidenced by far-right extremists on the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act to open the door to a Jim Crow-like attack on black representation across the American South. We are exploring all options to overturn this shocking decision, no matter what it takes. House Democrats will win in November so we can help rescue this nation from the extremism being unleashed by Donald Trump and Republicans. Our fight is not over. We are just getting started, end quote.
All right, so let me get this straight, Timu. MAGA is doing voter suppression. Okay, even though everybody is still going to be able to vote across the nation, it's MAGA doing voter suppression. And we also ignore all of the gerrymandering that went on in the blue states that have basically disenfranchised, to use their own word, all of the Republican districts from the state of California and from the New England area, also from the state of Illinois, but we'll just set that aside. And so he says that the Supreme Court is gutting the Voter Rights Act because they said that you cannot do the gerrymandering based on racial lines. If they'd have done it any other way, they might have gotten away with it, but not in Virginia. Set that aside. We will get to that. He also says that we're opening the doors to Jim Crow style attacks on black representation. Why is it, okay, that every time we've got a conflict that comes up between Republicans and Democrats, The Democrats tried to scare black people by saying, oh, we're going back to Jim Crow, much in the same way that Joe Biden, when he was running in 2020, and he made that speech, he said, yeah, if you vote for Republicans, well, they're going to put you people back in chains. Or he said they're going to put y'all back in chains, right? So he tries to drudge up the horrible memory of slavery to make black people go, oh, Lord, they's going to put us back in chains. Oh, Lord, we better vote for Joe Biden. So now, every time we have a bill that gets presented that they don't like, just like the Save America Act, they claim that we're going back to the days of Jim Crow. Everything is Jim Crow now. I guess they want us to believe that all throughout the South, they are going to reinstate Jim Crow laws and have black people drinking in separate water fountains and using separate bathrooms. You can't fix that. I can't fix that. All you can do is just sit there and try to not let your head explode when you hear these absurd scare tactics. Okay, so then he also thinks that House Democrats will win in the midterms and rescue America from Trump. Now, I will say this. In the middle of his last term, they did gain, something like 40 seats, okay? But I don't think we have the same environment because the Democrats have gone much more extreme since then, much more on the emotional scare tactics, taking the most extreme measures. And this is after 4 years of absurdities with Joe Biden. This is after we allowed 20 million people to flood into the country. I don't think we're in the right environment that we would actually see the Democrats gaining 40 seats and taking over the House. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I think it's going to be pretty close. I tend to think that the Republicans are probably going to keep the House, but it is going to be close. Okay, so we're effing around, we're finding out, and he is farting harder. So while he's farting harder and claiming that the law is with us in Virginia, let's break that down completely. So I'm going to go to my notes, and I am going to attempt to explain to you in simple terms, like you're a sixth grader, okay, why Hakeem Jeffries is going to look like a complete potato head when all this is done, because he's dead wrong. All right, we'll start off with an analogy, all right? Think of Virginia and the voting and the House of Representatives and the Supreme Court and all of that, kind of like a school. What if you had a school? Who runs the school? The principal. But who also has authority in a school? Well, it's the teachers who are under the principal. So imagine the United States Constitution is the principal of the whole school. All right. Now, the principal sets the big rules that everybody has to follow. No fighting, no bullying, basic stuff, that applies to every classroom. However, each classroom has its own teacher. And each of those teachers is kind of like a state constitution. Now, when I think back, I had some teachers that would allow you to talk in a whisper to your friends sitting next to you, and other teachers who would spank you if you talked back in my day in the 70s, who wouldn't let you talk at all. Some would let you chew gum and eat candy, and others did not. They set their own rules of what they would allow in the classroom. So a teacher runs their own classroom. They make their own rules about how a student sits in the chair, how they get their homework turned in, if there is any homework, how they're going to grade, if you can turn in late homework or not. Okay. Now, as long as none of the individual teachers' rules break the principal's rules, well, then that's okay. And each classroom is going to run differently. So if there's a kid in one class who can't eat candy because the teacher said no, he can't appeal to the principal and say, well, this other classroom, they get to eat candy. The principal's not going to overturn that because that law stops in that classroom. Okay? So that's exactly how the United States and Virginia work. You've got a two-layer system. The United States has one constitution that sits at the top. It sets the floor. The minimum rights that every American has, no matter what state that they live in. But then Virginia, the state, they've got their own separate constitution written by Virginians for Virginians. And then that governs how Virginia runs its own business, its roads, its courts, the elections, the redistricting, all of that. And most people don't realize that every single state has its own constitution. We need to send half the population of the United States back to grade school or middle school so that they can learn these simple things that I guess they weren't teaching when they were in school. All right, so did you know that some of the states' constitutions are actually older than the U.S. Constitution itself? So Virginia's constitution dates back to 1776, before the United States was officially a country. It happened before the official Constitution of the United States was written. Okay, so why is it that Virginia can have the final say on the redistricting? Why is it stopped there? Why can't they appeal to the Supreme Court? Well, it's because drawing the district maps is a state function. The U.S. Constitution does not tell Virginia exactly how to draw its legislative districts. It only sets certain floors. Like you can't draw lines specifically to discriminate by race. All right, that's a violation of the federal law. As long as they're not doing that, the Supreme Court of the United States is not going to step in. Okay, so within the floors of the Virginia Constitution, the Virginia courts are the boss. So when Virginia Supreme Court says redistricting plan, the plan is rejected based on the Virginia Constitution, well, that's not defying the U.S. Constitution, dummy. All right, that's the system working exactly as it was designed. Okay, let's make another simple analogy for all you doubters out there, because I know there's still people that they can't do it, they should be able to appeal. Speed limits on highways. Did you know that the federal government does not set the speed limit for every road in America? Did you know that? The states do that. You might have 70 miles an hour legally in one state and 55 in another. In Missouri, we've got 70 on the interstate. When I go to see my daughter in Texas, it changes to 80. So you can drive 80 miles per hour. It changes because the states set the speed limits. That is their function. Okay, so when they have 80 in Texas and we have 70, neither one of them is violating the U.S. Constitution. So redistricting is the same thing. It's a state function. The state governs it. The state Supreme Court interprets the state constitution. All right? The U.S. Constitution only steps in when somebody can prove that a federal right was violated. You got that? Like equal protection or voting rights under federal law. And if that's not the issue, the state constitution is the final word, period. That's why it's not going to go to the Supreme Court. So, misconceptions that people have. You know, a lot of people grow up thinking that America has one law system, the U.S. Constitution on top. All right? And that's not it. Constitution's on top and everything else flows from it directly. So the reality is, for the short bus people in the room, America has 51 constitutional systems, one federal and 50 state ones that run right alongside with it. So they overlap in certain areas, but in huge areas of daily life, in the courts, in elections, districts, property rights, education, the state constitution is the primary governing document for people who live in that state, period. And the founders actually designed it this way on purpose. It's called federalism, okay? So the whole idea was to prevent one central government from controlling everything. The power was supposed to stay close to the people, meaning close to the states. And meanwhile, you hear the Democrats say that they're fighting to save the democracy. And so what they really mean is they're fighting to save the Democratic Party. What they're really saying is when we don't get our way, we're okay with federalizing all of the states. But when it's something they don't like, they start to holler about states' rights. So when you hear them say, we're saving the democracy, they're saving the democratocracy or the democratocracy. Okay, I did a short couple of days ago, and I called it the Democratocracy, and then I changed that to the Democrapology. No, Democrapocracy. That's our word right there. That's hard to say that. So you got to watch out when you're listening to these stupid people that ride the short bus like Timu Obama, Mr. Potato Head, Hakeem Jeffries, because out of one side of his neck, he hollers about state rights and the people's rights and, we have rights. And out of the other side of his neck, he wants to set rules that override people's rights, that override state constitutions, and you're dead wrong. Now, tell me what you think about that in the comments below. Do you think Hakeem Jeffries has overstepped his bounds by trying to claim that the Virginia Supreme Court is off its gourd and handling this case wrong? Post in the comments below. Tell me what you think. I personally think that Hakeem Jeffries is the one who is off his gourd. And, it gets more ridiculous. We'll have to talk about it in the next video, how the Democrats decided to come up with this new retarded idea where since they didn't get their way, since the Supreme Court of Virginia says no, let's do age discrimination and get rid of the entire Virginia Supreme Court. And they're supposedly thinking about doing that by setting the mandatory retirement age at 53. And they'll appoint like a whole new 7 radical leftist lunatic judges so that they can overturn the previous decisions so that they can get their way. Now, we can talk more about this and break down the exact mechanics of why the Supreme Court of Virginia turned this down, because there were several things that were wrong with the entire process, and it even involves the way they worded the question on the ballot. And if you want to see that video, let me know. Last but not least, guys, you got to like, subscribe, and tick the notification bell on something new. I'm going to start putting a blog post on the community tab for every video. So instead of depending on YouTube to let you down and not notify you when I do a new video, because 99.9% of the subscribers don't get notified, I want you to come and visit my blog page every day and see if I have posted a new video. Let me know what you think about that also in the comments, if that would help you to stay on top of when I'm pumping out a new video. So that's all I got for this one. This is Carlton, and I am out. There we go.